everybody, I'm Roland from Roland and Riches, and there's great improv everywhere.
I need some juice, please.
And that was Liss and Sam's, and they're out of the Moment Theatre in San Francisco, California. That's Joe Liss and Marcus Sams, and this specific show was from the Improvaganza Festival in Hawaii in 2018. Let's take a look at some clips and see what we can learn. But if you want to go straight to the recap and miss all the nuggets of gold that we're about to look at, the time code is down below. Okay, as you watch this short clip, pay attention to where Marcus is standing. He's the one on the left.
I do not like juice.
This is special juice.
Say more.
Okay, I love this. So often we rely on our words. We tell people how our characters feel, or we let them know verbally what we're thinking. And in this short 10 seconds, Marcus manages to convey to the audience his growing interest in whatever Joe is selling. And yeah, he says the words, say more, but it's that step forward that really cements it. In fact, it's such a strong move physically that Marcus brings it back again after a small detour in the scene.
So say more.
To not only get the scene back to where it was, but also to remind the audience his character's state of mind and that he's interested in this juice, even though he may not want to be. And yeah, I mentioned there was a detour between those two moments. Let's take a quick look at that.
This is special juice.
Say more.
That's my name, Seymour.
So you have this lovely sign up here that says say more juice.
So it says, say more juice.
So say more.
This is a fun moment between the two of them, and a really great example of exploring a moment during your scene. I like to use the metaphor of driving on a freeway. So you're on the freeway, and you see something interesting, so you get off the exit ramp. You take a quick look around, kind of do a little exploration, then hop back on the freeway and keep going in your original direction. And in this case, the original direction was the interaction between the two characters when Joe offered Marcus some juice. They saw something interesting when Marcus says, say more, and Joe creates that off-ramp by saying that was his name, Seymour. They get off that off-ramp, play around with that for a short amount of time, then hop back onto the freeway, and Marcus gets us back in the original direction by taking that step forward and saying, so say more again. Now, was this something they had to do? No, of course not. They could have gotten off the off-ramp and seen where that new road would have taken them and never gotten back onto the freeway. But it felt like the new thing they were exploring only had a little bit of juice, no pun intended. And when they felt that they explored it enough, rather than try to stretch it out or make it into something more important than it really was, they went back to the original interaction. And also, they could have totally chosen to just ignore the off-ramp completely and just keep driving forward. But personally, I think those explorations are what make improv so fun in the moment. Okay, in this next clip, watch Joe and Marcus's physicality as they transition from one scene to the next. This is a great example of playing what your partner is doing. Joe does this great thing where he realizes his hands are in this odd position, so he uses that and starts walking down stage to start a new scene. It's such a great moment of improv. And Marcus clearly doesn't know what Joe is doing. I mean, how can he? It's a brand new move that takes him to a new scene. And my guess is that Joe himself didn't quite know what it was at that moment. But that doesn't stop Marcus. Once he realized this was a new scene, he joined in, mimicking his partner and doing the same thing. And that reminds me of when I was a beginning improviser. I'd probably only been doing it about a year. And one of my teammates on stage started doing a move that I literally had no idea what the hell they were doing. It was like some sort of robot character who was singing. And I'll be honest, I was a really bad teammate. I had no idea what they were doing, so I did a horrible thing, and I stayed in the wings. I remember thinking, I have no freaking clue what's going on. There's no way in hell I'm getting on stage. And that was totally the wrong thing to do. I was a bad teammate. I mean, now I know that what I should have done is gotten out there and joined my teammate. Even if I had zero idea what the hell was going on. Probably even more important if I don't know what's going on to get out there and just mimic. This way we can figure it out together. Joe does a fantastic job of just realizing his hands were in this new position and using that to transition to a new scene. And Marcus, unlike what I did a long time ago, was a great teammate because even though he doesn't know what Joe is doing, he mimics him. They'll figure it out, and they'll get to figure it out together. Okay, so you know how in improv class, you might have heard that you should have an emotional response to things that happen on stage? Great. Then watch this clip. Marcus gives us a great emotional reaction. And of course, Marcus's emotional reaction should cause some sort of response from Joe. That was such a great moment. Yeah, have an emotional reaction. It doesn't matter to what. I mean, you can always choose a reason why something affects you emotionally. And let's talk about Joe's great reaction for a moment. In the real world, if you see a friend of yours crying, you too would have some sort of reaction. I mean, that reaction could be joining them in crying, or maybe it's yelling at them that there's no crying in baseball, or maybe your reaction is to be totally embarrassed and just slink away so they don't burden you with their problems. I mean, the point is, either way, you would have a reaction if your friend started crying, right? So when a character on stage has an emotional response, consider also having one of your own to them. Just like Joe does here by going in and hugging and consoling Marcus. Okay, so in this next scene, watch how Joe joins in with Marcus's singing.
I'm doing it. How about you?
This is such a small but powerful choice on stage. Choosing to join your scene partner in what they're doing on stage is so much fun for the audience, and it'll show your partner that you're willing to play with their choices, which hopefully gives them additional confidence that they can start making bolder choices, because they know you're going to join them and not judge what they've done. All right, watch this next clip. Joe and Marcus stop having any words in their show and put on a completely physical scene. And they commit. I mean, they commit hard. I mean, this thing keeps going. And going. And they commit harder. And harder. I mean, this scene goes on for over 1.5 minutes and finally ends when Marcus's character kills Joe's. They both commit to this so hard. And I remember when I was a beginning improviser, the idea of doing a scene with no words, with just physicality and utterances, would have scared the crap out of me. And I'm sure that if I had tried it, 20 seconds into it, I'd have given into the internal pressure and I would have started talking, or I'd do something like yell, cut, and act like what we had just seen was us filming. To commit to something like this as hard as they did, and for the amount of time that they did, not everyone can pull that off. And it's certainly something to either work towards, or if you can already do it, bring it out every so often. Now, this next clip happens right after Marcus kills Joe and Joe falls to the ground.
I need some juice, please.
This is such a great moment, and it's so incredibly simple, yet has a huge impact on the audience. Marcus brings us back to the beginning of the show. It's like this has been in his hip pocket the whole time, and he was waiting for the right moment to spring it on the audience. Such a simple, elegant, incredible move.
My granddaughter. Right here, my granddaughter.
This was such a fun moment in the show. Clearly, Joe and Marcus aren't afraid to explore those moments that aren't your traditional speaking scenes. This wasn't speaking, and it wasn't really a scene. Unlike the scene we saw earlier without words, this really didn't have any sort of narrative. Some would call this a group game, and I'd call it that, or an exploration of the moment, or maybe just teammates playing together on stage. It's a strong facet of improv and requires a strong yes and from everyone on stage. When these moments occur, play with your partners and go with the flow of what's happening. Leave judgment off the stage. Okay, pay attention to what Joe says.
Wait, this is cash only?
Yes, cash on
I don't have cash. What are you doing?
Go get some cash.
Go find some cash. Where might I find cash?
Joe says, find some cash, and then corrects himself immediately. But the audience heard it, and Marcus heard it. So why not yes and that? When you find these little moments where things may not go 100% correct, don't just sweep them under the rug. Play with them. Okay, let's look at our final scene.
I wasn't expecting you.
I've been standing here by the door.
Oh, that's...
Your grandmother let me in. Something about a floor that needs mopping.
Let me put some clothes on.
As an audience member, I love when this happens in a show. Marcus gave us information that forced the audience to go back retroactively in our mind and change what we had seen. When Marcus said, let me put some clothes on, we had to go, oh, he was naked that whole time, which as you saw was super fun for the audience. These are such great moments when they happen. It's like you're using a green screen and someone changed the background. Or, if you caught the Zoom reference in last week's video, it's like when you and your family go to Sears to get a family portrait done and the photographer changes the background. Yep, that's my 80s reference of the day. And by the way, this worked only because Marcus didn't give us new information that contradicted what we had seen. It's not like we saw him get dressed and then he said, well, let me put some clothes on. That really wouldn't make any sense at all. But having a normal scene with no reference to wearing anything or what he was wearing and then letting us know he's naked, that's a great improv move and absolutely hilarious. Okay, time for the recap. Use physicality, not just words, to show what you're feeling. We saw how Marcus said so much by just taking a step forward. Moving towards someone or moving away from them or walking off stage, throwing something down in a huff. I mean, they're all moves that don't require words and says so much during a scene. If you find something interesting, allow yourself the opportunity to explore that moment a little. Maybe it completely takes over and the scene goes in a direction you weren't expecting. Or maybe you realize that it only has a little bit of juice and you need to get back on that freeway and head in your original direction. Mimic your partner, even if you don't know what they're doing. When you join your scene partner in what they're doing, you're saying yes and to them. You're making their choice important, and you're showing you're a partner they can trust. Don't worry if you don't have a clue what it is they're doing. You'll both discover it together, and it's that discovery and collaboration that makes improv so fun and worthwhile. Have an emotional response. This is so critical. If your character doesn't care enough about what's happening on stage to have an actual emotional response, why should the audience care? And it might feel like saying some words to express that you care is enough, but you have your entire body to show an emotional response. And we also saw that when Marcus had an emotional response, Joe also did. Again, if Joe doesn't care, why should the audience? And just to be clear, I don't mean Joe's character had to be consoling like he was. That's a great choice, but he could have easily been disgusted at how Marcus was screaming. The important thing is to have that emotional response, not what the response is. Join your partner and play their game. We saw Joe start to sing with Marcus. It's such a simple move, but so strong. If your partner is doing something, join in. Commit hard. We saw that Joe and Marcus are very comfortable doing nonverbal scenes. And there's a lot of internal pressure we feel as players on stage when we do something like that. And we get nervous. We start wondering if we can keep it up. Will the audience enjoy it? How long can we keep this going? Should we just cut our losses right now? But if you commit hard the way Joe and Marcus did in both those moments, the audience will be totally engaged. Remember what has happened on stage. Just by going back to the beginning and saying, "I'd like some juice, please," Marcus had the audience in just a lot of laughter. That's the nature of improv. The audience is there watching you build this world from the beginning. They're in on the whole thing. So when you use something that was previously brought up, especially if it was several minutes ago, you're showing them that you're paying attention and you're reminding them of something that has already happened. It's like bringing up an inside joke that the whole audience is in on because they were there when you created the original moment. Just play together. It doesn't need to make sense. Joe and Marcus had another nonverbal scene that had even less of a plot or storyline, and it was fantastic. Getting people to work together without judging each other and doing it in harmony with a sense of play thrown in, I mean, we just don't see that in our day-to-day lives. and it's so much fun to watch. Don't let what your partner say pass you by. Joe corrected himself after he said, go find some cash, but it was out there and we all heard it. So use those moments. Instead of letting it go or ignoring it, Marcus used it and turned it into a really fun moment. If your partner says something interesting, don't let it pass you by. Use it. And our final lesson, retroactively change what the audience saw. Okay, this is really not a lesson, it's more of an additional tool you can put on your improv tool belt. Because there won't always be an opportunity for this in a show, and even if there is, it might not be something you'll always want to do. But if you haven't yet done anything in the scene to contradict what you're about to say or do, it can become a very fun moment and surprise the audience in a way that they weren't expecting. And that's the recap. If you have any thoughts or questions about it, feel free to comment. I'd like to thank again Joe and Marcus, that's Liss and Sam's out of Moment Theatre in San Francisco. You can find all their contact info below, as well as the link to their show in its entirety. And if you're on a team and would like to submit your show for the series, email me or comment below. There's a lot of great improv out there, and I'd love to show the world how great your improv is. Bye!